Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, chapter 1028 of One Piece is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. Now that you have, let's begin. Man, this chapter gave me things that I was both expecting and wanting badly. It's just crazy, right, that we've come to expect in WANO that literally every chapter is bringing something huge. I mean, we got Sanji in this chapter, we'll talk more about that. The Smash cover page was amazing. Cypher Pole, Rob Lucci, there's so much to read behind that. Even the Momo and Yamato stuff is just really good. There was nothing about this chapter that I did not love. But yeah, you guys know when I don't know exactly what I want to talk about, we'll start with the beginning. And the beginning introduces us once again to Cypher Pole, and they're talking about the dragon that appeared right in front of them. And they said this: it definitely matches the devil fruit Vegapunk made. This is really interesting to me. I don't know if this is an oversight on Oda's part or there's layers to this that I don't get, but it matches the devil fruit that Vegapunk made. I presumed, right, that Vegapunk made one devil fruit and it was uneaten. So how would it have matched the devil fruit that Vegapunk made if no one ever ate it or they never saw anyone eat it? How does that make sense? Are they just going based off of what Vegapunk was trying to make? Again, it was presumed to be a failure. So to me, that doesn't really seem like a natural conclusion. Or, and this is where it gets interesting, guys, and you just kind of have to presume, right? You gotta assume that Oda didn't make a mistake here. He might have. I try not to speculate that when I don't actually believe that, but it is possible. But the only other thing that makes sense to me, for them to have recognized the dragon and say, that's the thing that Vegapunk made, is that Vegapunk made more than one. This is important. I don't think that Cypher Pole would know that Momonosuke ate the fruit and what that would look like. So you have this fruit that Momo found in a glass container that is supposed to be a failure. If they presume that this is Vegapunk's fruit, maybe he made more after that one. Maybe the one Momo ate was the first. I hadn't really considered anything like this, but now I am. And the implications of this are just crazy, right? Because we can see what Momo is doing with the fruit. We know what Kaido can do with the fruit. Could you imagine if, it was mass produced? Or even if not mass produced, there's still other people, potentially even to fodder level people who could have this devil fruit. It just, the world government right here is getting a massive power boost, if that's true. And I want to believe that it's true. And so I want to admit something. For a long time, I just assumed that Vegapunk made this artificial fruit, and it was actually success, but he didn't want to give it to the world government, so he claimed that it was a failure, and then sort of left it behind so that people would forget about it. That's been my low-key theory about Vegapunk, because I want to believe that Vegapunk is actually an ally, and this all relates to Kuma's programming, where Vegapunk essentially allowed Kuma to guard the Straw Hat's ship based on Kuma's request. And so Kuma and Vegapunk having this kind of relationship makes me want to believe that Vegapunk is a good person, which also makes me want to believe that if Vegapunk created something stupidly powerful, he wouldn't actually want the world government to have it. But then Cypher Pole says this: well, it makes no difference to us if this was Vegapunk's artificial fruit or not. Just let the pirates take each other out. This intimate knowledge about Vegapunk's fruit, what it could do, and kind of the laissez-faire of like, this is Vegapunk's fruit in the hands of an enemy now allied with a Straw Hat, not a big deal. I feel like it contradicts some of that headcanon of mine. Another theory of mine is that Vegapunk's artificial fruit essentially is an ancient weapon, or trying to recreate an ancient weapon if Kaido's devil fruit is that. And again, Cypher Pole's laissez-faire here kind of contradicts that. Like, the enemies have it, no big deal. This could also add to the fact that they don't know something about the fruit, or it could just mean sort of what it says, where the fruit is not quite what I want it to be. Or another theory, I know we're throwing shit against the wall right now, guys, but another theory is that Vegapunk's first attempt at the devil fruit was the best attempt. And so the one Momo ate is better than all the ones that Vegapunk created afterwards because he powered it down a little bit, and that's why Cypher Pole isn't as concerned about the enemies having it. But I think I explained pretty effectively here why I'm so excited. I mean, we're just, 2 panels into the chapter, and already there's this, the way that Oda conveyed it, there's so much discussion and possibility that excites me. And we're not done. After they move on from the dragon, Lucci tells the member of Cypher Pole that are in Onigashima, "We have orders from above. In the unlikely case that Kaido is defeated, it's been decided that the world government will annex the independent land of Wano. The ships are already on their way, but how likely is it that they'll be needed?" Well, Mr. CP0 guy, I think that it is incredibly likely that they're needed. I mean, just pure logic here, right? Why would you throw a line like this in the story if something wasn't going to come of it, right? We're going to see the Marines are going to show up, which probably also means that despite what Oda's trying to say about the probability, I mean, this is just further confirmation that Kaido is probably going down here. He says, "But the odds of them actually beating Kaido, ? I can't even picture it happening." Like, okay, man. They've evened the odds from just astronomically unlikely to about a 50-50 battle, and he still can't see them beating Kaido. Okay, I'll take that one on the chin, but it's probably gonna happen. Either that, or Oda is a red herring wizard, and envisions some other way in which the Marines can get involved without Kaido being defeated first. Which would be the smartest thing to do. I just, you gotta jump through many hoops. It's just much easier to say, well, Kaido gets defeated and then the Marines show up. That's probably what's going to happen. And man, I realized I haven't even talked about the scene in general and how much I love this. I love this so much. First off, Rob Lucci is coming, and my hype for that is absolutely immeasurable. But even bigger than that is this is confirmation of what I've wanted this entire arc, right? It's like, make this big time. I want to be blown off of my feet, and this is the kind of thing that makes me imagine that happening. So here's an irrefutable fact, right? Luffy right now is fighting against Kaido. The likelihood that Luffy finishes this fight, whether win or lose, with a lot of health and vitality is incredibly low, right? Win or lose, Luffy's gonna leave this fight hanging on, to the bare shreds of his life. Another fact, okay, we know that will happen with Zoro because Zoro took those stupid pills or whatever they were that amplify his pain, whatever. Defeats King or not, Zoro done, okay? I apply this like a blanket to every ally, essentially, okay? That's the battle state, win or lose. And you have Cypher Pole just waiting to involve themselves. At that moment, this arc will be so good. At that point, you gotta think, okay, how will the Straw Hats get out of this alive, right? They are exhausting all of their current allies. That is what's currently happening. It's taking, this is the sort of theme of the fight, right? It takes everything that they've got in order to defeat Kaido, and you know that someone comes afterwards, and we're not even talking about Big Mom yet. So essentially, something's gotta happen. Something's gotta happen to save them. The Revolutionary Army has to show up in order to counter Cypher Pole. Very realistic, if you ask me. Big Mom's children switch sides. Again, this is something that I speculated, very reasonable to me. Something like this has to happen, and all of this is great. Hell, maybe Shanks and Blackbeard shows up. I really don't care how. Honestly. I'm just sitting here so excited because this arc we're starting to get real confirmation that the arc becomes what I always hoped that it would be. And I'm not taking anything away from the chapters that we've already had. I've enjoyed all the chapters leading up here, but there's a level above where it's like peak One Piece all time. I could see that happening. Remember back at the beginning of WANO when we're like, everyone shows up, Marines show up, Revolutionary Army shows up, Shanks, Blackbeard, Vegapunk, everybody. It's like, well, this is the lead up to something like that. I'm not saying it will be everybody, but we now know it'll be somebody. Most likely. But let's play devil's advocate for a moment. Let's say that nobody else shows up and I'm wrong. Alright? Well, the Straw Hats have to deal with, and they can't deal with Cypherpole at the end of the arc. Cypherpole and the government take over WANO, which is also a cool thing to happen, because it pulls at the emotions of the Straw Hats because they'll have come to a place and failed. That's what the Straw Hats do, right? They go to an island, they save the island. It's a pattern. It repeats itself over and over again. And some of the best moments in One Piece is where Oda takes his pre-established pattern that we love and we expect, and he breaks it, like Sabaody. And it draws forth the character's emotions in new and profound and awesome ways. So it is truly a win-win. And the same thing relates to Nico Robin. I mean, guys, Oda was pretty much verbatim about this in Zou, that Nico Robin would become central to the story in some capacity. We had a speech from Nekomamushi where he was basically like, Nico Robin's skill set is desired from all the big players around the world that want to collect the poneglyphs, so you're going to have to defend her. As soon as that happened, you knew that that was going to become a big part of the story, and we can kind of see it now, right? It started off earlier, a little bit earlier, I guess, in Wano with Big Mom and Kaido, now CP0 as well. Oda has some big moment planned for this. That's what you know. This is a thing that could complicate other things as well. Like, CP0 sort of set up this scenario for us, that if the Strats are able to defeat Kaido, then they will take over Wano. But let's just hypothetically, I know that I and basically everybody else, I feel like, believes that Kaido will go down in this arc. But hypothetically, if Kaido gets Nico Robin, what does the world government do? What does Cypherpole do? Their ships are mobilized. So this is a way in which Oda could be really creative about introducing this faction, sort of giving you expectations about what they'll do, and then potentially surpass that with an exciting twist. We've got to stop Kaido from becoming the Pirate King because he has Nico Robin. This is just an example of how Oda could use CP0 and their presence, waiting on who's going to win this battle, and still involve themselves even if the Straw Hats don't actually win. I don't really want to get into this fully in depth because I don't think that a lot of people are really ready for it. Even though there's still a lot of things that are possible, and I really like shedding light on the little, things that you're not necessarily thinking of that could become more, because those are the things that truly I get excited about and I want to talk about. But what I do want to highlight here is that from the very beginning, Oda talked about Kaido's war. Kaido was going to start the greatest war ever. And then at the very beginning of the Fire Festival, Oda doubled down on it, and Kaido was talking about joining an alliance with Big Mom, discovering the ancient weapons, and finding the One Piece. This is all building up Kaido's plan, his plot, to take over the world. This is a thing that actually exists. Kaido has some kind of idea of how he will want to accomplish his goals, and it would make sense for us to actually see it. And if the Straw Hats beat them here and now, in the way that sort of we're leading up to right now, this would make most of this a red herring. And it's not necessarily terrible if it happens that way, but you can't forget the other storyline that Oda is simultaneously building. So I just want to keep your mind open. It would be an absolutely crazy end to this arc if, despite all of this setup that they're going to win, and it would be just like Oda to do something like this, despite all the setup that they're going to win, the Straw Hats still lose. In the process, Big Mom potentially takes the lifespan of Straw Hats. They take Nico Robin. Maybe Law sacrifices himself to save Luffy and Zoro. Maybe we'll have a situation similar to Sabaody. It can really be justified either way if you really, really want to. Oda's speaking out of both sides of his mind, and if the Strats were to lose, we'll look back at all these panels that we got today from Cypherpole where they're like, I see no chance that they're going to defeat Kaido, and be like, whoa, that was Oda basically telling us. And then the Straw Hats, potentially not all together, have to join in with other allies that exist within the world, like the Revolutionary Army, to continue this fight elsewhere. And then you're reminded of the setup of Sabo. Sabo is missing, potentially captured in Marie-Joie or Marineford. Maybe his execution is coming up. Maybe we're about to have Marineford, actual Marineford 2.0, and it'll just be in a way that you totally don't anticipate. I know I'm playing devil's advocate because I do think that Kaido's going down, but these thoughts occur to me. Either way, you gotta wonder what happens with Nico Robin. How does Oda intend to pay off all of this setup that everyone's after Nico Robin? I find it hard to believe anything other than Nico Robin is in extreme danger. The Straw Hats managed to defeat Big Mom and Kaido in some fashion, but they can't deal with Cypher Pole. Nico Robin in danger. Maybe through some miracle they managed to avoid Cypher Pole. Maybe Blackbeard shows up with all of his powers that allow him to disguise himself. Not him personally, but Shilu can go invisible and Katarina Devon can change form, those kinds of things. He could show up anywhere, right? And so that's another threat to Nico Robin. Hell, to go full conspiracy theory, maybe the Revolutionary Army finally decides we need you to tell us where the ancient weapons are in order to do good and defeat the government. Will this be how Oda reintroduces Shirahoshi into the story? Nico Robin definitely knows about Shirahoshi. Or just a crazy what if, right? The Revolutionary Army shows up, but rather than save all of the Straw Hats like you would expect, right? Dragon would save his son. Dragon instead chooses not to, and the only one that he saves is Nico Robin. You might say to yourself, JB, that is a crazy twist. There's no way that's going to happen. But if you actually sit down and think about everything that you know about the Revolutionary Army and Dragon, why has he ever really truly shown any care for his son? Would he put his organization, its safety or its goals, below saving Luffy? I'm not sure about that. At every step, the Revolutionary Army has assisted the Straw Hats, not on Dragon's orders. Luffy saved Ivankov. Kuma just happened to run into the Straw Hats and did so because Luffy was Dragon's son, not because Dragon ordered him. Dragon and Logtown ran into Luffy randomly, and saving Luffy did not threaten in any way the Revolutionary Army. And then Sabo is Luffy's friend, and Sabo is currently not really part of the Revolutionary Army because something has happened to him. These are the kinds of out there, but also fairly validated theories that I enjoy. Storytelling is always about twisting expectations, and of course the community's expectation that's inbuilt is that Dragon is on Luffy's side, but to what extent? But yeah, the whole point of this aside, obviously the Revolutionary Army wasn't in the chapter, but the whole point of this aside is to illustrate how many ways that Oda could use the Nico Robin setup to pay us off later. And while it's possible that the payoff involves the Straw Hats actually being able to defend her, it's possible that Oda sort of chooses that as this is the big moment that I have in mind. I find that least likely of all the various things that occur to me. I find it more likely that Nico Robin separates from the crew not by choice and or gets captured. And then we have lines like this. Immediately after Cypher Pole talks about Nico Robin, we pan to Robin running alongside Brook, and she says, "You're so dependable, Brook." And Brook says, "Praise like that will go straight to my head. Be wary of what Oda wants you to think." And of course, he wants you to think that the Straw Hats are competent enough at this point in time that they will be able to protect Robin. But lines like this can have an alternate meaning. Essentially, yeah, I'm doing a good job saving you, but praise like that will go straight to my head. I'll fail. I've seen a lot of people argue that this can't happen in the story because of Enies Lobby and Water 7. But the big thing about Water 7 and Enies Lobby was the character growth for Robin was to not give up, particularly on herself or the crew, and I don't think that that is ever going to happen again. So really, this would be an inversion of Water 7, where Robin didn't allow the Straw Hats to fail. She gave up. In this case, it's the reverse. She's captured because the Straw Hats failed. And however that happens, like it or not, that is what I believe, and the implications of this are, again, the things that I love to speculate and think about, right? Because you're leaving the Straw Hats. They'll obviously be alive, mostly, and I don't think any Straw Hat actually dies. But I just imagine how they would feel at the conclusion of this arc. Even if they defeat Kaido or not, however it might be, for them to lose a member of their crew, that's going to weigh on them in a way that emotionally I would be excited for. On top of all the casualties that I'm expecting in this war, the real takeaway from this battle is that no matter what they were able to accomplish, they still couldn't protect the things that they wanted to protect. Even without Nico Robin being captured, this is something that Oda's already setting up through people like Kinemon and Kiku and Yasu and whoever else might have died. Maybe Peckham's has died. You know, that he's building this at Pedro, right? All of these casualties are going to weigh on them, and adding Robin to it would only emphasize it further, which would fit. While the fan base is so freaking excited that Luffy is fighting on par with a Yonko Kaido, and Zoro is fighting against King, and Sanji's fighting against Queen, at the end of the day, the characters themselves won't see it quite the same way as the fans because of the things that they have already lost and others they might lose. But anyway, guys, I don't want to ramble on too long. The point is that the things that happen in this chapter, they open up a world of possibility. They set up a world of possibility that could be game-changing for the story and exactly what I want. Next scene focused around Momonosuke and Yamato. Yamato decides to leave Momonosuke behind because she's gonna go disarm the bombs of the island, which is a curious choice on Oda's part, I feel like, because it's almost, I mean, he's definitely trying to sell us on the idea that the island actually has potential to fall. This is something that I see commonly with lesser authors and lesser writers, essentially, that if the island isn't going to fall, right, then there would be no need to disarm the bombs. Some authors would forget about this possibility, and in a way, hint towards what's going to happen. But in this case, Oda's building tension around the idea of Yamato disarming the bombs, which means that there is potential that Momonosuke fails. This could be a red herring, but this could also be foreshadowing. Keep that in mind. But I guess what's most curious to me about this in the moment is, who is Yamato going to encounter as she tries to accomplish this, right? Because we basically know where all Kaido's fighters are. So it should be relatively easy for Yamato to accomplish this task. But it won't be, because somebody will likely stand in her way. So is this going to be Cypher Pole? Is the Big Mom Pirates going to appear from inside the island somewhere? Or, you know, like, I don't know. I kind of have a feeling that Yamato will encounter that mysterious shadow figure that everyone's forgot about from earlier in the arc that looked a lot like Toki Hiyori. I hope so. And then of course we have Momonosuke trying to produce the little clouds to lift the island, and as of right now, he is failing. I think that he will succeed. I think it would be really, really funny in a dark humor sort of way if Momonosuke just failed, right? And then Kaido sends the island straight towards the flower capital within the next 5 minutes. Momo's like, no! But I really doubt that that's going to happen. At least not immediately. But yeah, that leads us to the end of the chapter and Sanji versus Queen. I gotta pat myself on the back here a little bit for the beginning of this fight, because so many people told me that Sanji had already accepted the raid suit, right? He's already worn the raid suit. So it's not a plot point, JB. It's not a big deal. He's just gonna show up and he's gonna wear the raid suit, and it was never what you made it out to be, and you people were wrong. Wrong! Honestly, I'm unsure about the discussion surrounding this because I haven't really been reading what everybody has been saying about that this week, but there's a reason why Sanji wore the raid suit in certain circumstances and why he's not wearing it now. And this has been set up for a very, very long time. Earlier on, Sanji was perfectly fine wearing the raid suit when he thought that nobody would notice. That's why the invisibility powers of the raid suit appealed to him. That's why he wore the raid suit into the bathhouse. The big thing that Sanji has against the raid suit is essentially people recognizing him as a Vinspoke. Sanji does not want to be associated with his family, who he does not consider to be his family. The setup for this at the very beginning of Wano was he decided to wear the raid suit thinking that nobody would recognize him, and then Law recognized him, which really bothered him. And so what did Oda do at the beginning of Sanji and Queen's fight? Queen explains how he knows of the Vinspoke judge, and so then what does Sanji do? Sanji then can't wear the raid suit. It's literally that straightforward. I argued this a lot in the past, and people didn't either care much about it or like it, or they disagreed, but I think that Oda's been setting up this sort of conflict for Sanji since the beginning of the post-time skip, We've seen time and time again Sanji fight people and lose. He fights Doflamingo, he loses. He fights Virgo, he loses. And I know people will say, well, did he lose or not? And all the technicalities. I don't really care about that. The point is that Sanji had a really hard time getting a W in a fight up until now. And it's something that the fans, they noticed. And so this is just another one of those situations. And if Sanji does not wear the raid suit, he will lose. Hell, man, even earlier, right? Because of what was going on with his chivalry and whatnot, he couldn't defeat Black Maria either. Oda has been incredibly consistent in this portrayal. You'll notice that the only time that Sanji has won, those fights have been off-screen. He defeats Yanji off-screen. He defeats Page 1 off-screen. He fights against, I think it was Drake, off-screened, all of that. And I think that this is sort of Oda all working towards his climactic moment with Sanji. Yes, there has been some wins, but Oda wants to focus on the losses. And what this does, I believe, is it starts creating a mindset for Sanji. Sanji at this point, just like the fans, should be frustrated, essentially doubting himself and wondering if he is pulling enough weight. And while I'm focusing on fights here, it's not just about fights. Even before Sanji encountered Black Maria, what did he do in this battle? He's going from one place to another, trying to figure out what he's going to do, and ultimately really did nothing. This also relates to Whole Cake Island. Sanji didn't trust the crew, didn't want to involve them in his problems, and made everything worse by going to Whole Cake Island not prepared, attacking his captain, almost getting everyone killed. This is the story that Oda is building for Sanji. Meanwhile, we have the raid suit. Sanji is afraid to wear the raid suit because he does not want to be associated with his family. Just simply put, guys, that is not a good excuse. Your friends' lives are on the line. You have a thing that'll make you stronger. Get over it. And he can't, not yet. So something will need to happen in order for him to grow. Part of that will probably be losing to Queen. Part of that will be being frustrated and doubting himself. And my other speculation about this is that Sanji essentially will change what the raid suits and what Vinsmoke will mean. By at some point in the story, in this arc or after it, I'm not entirely sure, he's going to wear the Vinsmoke name with pride. And people will stop associating the Vinsmokes as warmongers. They will start looking at them as heroes. And it is my theory that the Vinsmokes' history from 400 years in the past was they were not warmongers at that time. They were heroes. Sanji will restore their good name. Because Sanji is what it means to be a Vinsmoke, not Judge, nor his brothers and sisters who had their emotions removed. Look, the Vinsmoke story that we know of, the history, all comes from this comic that was in the World Economic Times. And so because it comes from Morgan's newspaper and the world government, that in and of itself probably means that it has been altered. History has been altered, and that's common throughout the story anyway. So I think that the whole story that we know about the Vinsmokes is wrong. But for us to actually learn this, we would need to learn the true history of them. So somebody would need to have this information. I'm still waiting for the Vinsmoke to make a reappearance. I'm almost certain that it has to happen. But again, my long-standing theory about this is essentially the Vinsmoke were defeated because of their emotions, as that's basically how Judge would explain it, that the Vinsmoke weren't actually defeated in combat, but it was their soft hearts. And so that's why he's overcompensated by removing emotions from his children, which he now views to be a weakness, and he's wrong, but that's the reason for these various things occurring. And then Oda has the opportunity to slam home the point, which is that what made the Vinsmoke strong all along was their capacity for love and kindness. But yeah, I just wanted to say this because, even someone like Queen could drop some true history sort of reveals about the Vinsmoke's history, and I would buy it. And so something like this could definitely help Sanji put on the raid suit initially. He may not need it to put on the raid suit and start mastering it, but it's possible. Either way, the sticking point with Sanji is whether he chooses his stubborn ideals over saving all of his friends. And this is interesting. This is really interesting to me because you could also apply the same concept to his chivalry, right? It's honestly very similar, where Sanji has an opportunity to do more, but there's a thing, something internal within him which prevents him. And so for Oda to basically say Sanji needs to wear the raid suit anyway in order to defeat the Queen and save his friends, then it might also apply to chivalry, potentially. Throwing that out there, don't get too mad. But yeah, fortunately in the short term, Sanji is being saved from not wearing the raid suit because his body is unlocking his natural Vinsmoke genetics. We got to see it in this chapter, and man, legitimate chills. Seeing Sanji basically break. First off, it was funny, but also hype levels are insane. I'm still curious as to the actual explanation though. We didn't get an explanation, we haven't gotten an explanation yet. Just the official confirmation that Sanji is unlocking Vinsmoke genes, which is basically what I felt like was the truth from a couple chapters ago. Whether I really like it long term, rereading the chapters later will depend on the explanation, but I trust Oda has a good one. But I'm not entirely sure what that is. You know, it's like, why? What about these present circumstances? Why is Sanji finally unlocking these powers now and not at any other time? But yeah, you guys know I don't even need to say the Queen stuff was just hilarious. I don't really feel like discussing it. I'm just acknowledging the fact. But yeah, this was essentially a perfect chapter of One Piece. This is like 10 out of 10 easy. Not only were the things that were happening interesting, but the long-term implications of them, what they set up, are the things that get me excited. Cypher Pull, basically saying that this arc is going to get really crazy at the end. Momo, will he succeed or not? Is this potentially foreshadowing that there might be some more failure? And Sanji's, I think the whole Sanji stuff sets up his character arc and emotional beats that I think are going to be great. So, you know, that's how I feel about the chapter. Curious as to what you guys think, whether you know something that I might have missed. Share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.